All right, welcome everyone. So glad to be here with you. I am going to share my screen and we will get started. So today we are talking about, are you lawyering or laboring? 7 steps to reduce chores and run a productive practice. So if you do want to access this deck, it is totally available to you. The deck link is below. And I will also put that in the chat. Let's see, copy the link. There we go. All right, so you will now have it in the chat if you want to follow along. So who am I? I'm Maddy Martin. I'm the VP of Marketing for Smith.ai. We're a 24/7 virtual receptionist service for calls, chats, texts, and Facebook messages. We have been around for 6 years now. Some of you may know us. We really specialize in connecting in with your business systems and your workflows. So we touch a lot of the software that you're using every day. We know the workflows that are most common for attorneys who make up the 80% of our client base. So very much specialized in working with legal services providers, and mostly focused in the US. We are also a member benefit of the Florida Bar, so I've provided a link here. I'll also put that link in the chat so that you have easy access to that. And happy to answer any questions that you have in the chat or via email afterwards about Smith.ai. But the fundamental thing to understand here is that, first of all, I've been doing marketing, small business communications, growing startups with very small budgets for a very long time. And for the last 15 years, I've seen the interplay between the talent and the technology and how both can be used to really optimize performance and results. So that's what I'm personally going to be sharing here today with specific application to your law firm. So here's what we're going to cover today. The learning goals are really about identifying the distractions and time-consuming tasks and inefficiencies, the opportunities that really great communications and business software systems provide, with specific attention to phone systems, specific workflows for call handling, email, text messaging, website chat, and then also what comes after that initial touch point. So scheduling and intake, conflict checks, and how do you receive certain types of calls if it's a collect call from jail, or outbound calls, and how much follow-up you need to do in order to maximize the opportunity to convert that lead into a client or deliver exceptional service to existing clients, maybe also fast responses to court staff and other members of your community that you need to be responsive to. And how do we do this efficiently? How do we do this affordably? And how do we do this without, going back to school for a computer science degree? So that's really what we're going to focus on, is the talent and utilizing, your skills best in running a tight operation, and then also the advanced techniques using technology and really affordable tools right now that are available, and I'm really excited about because it's more accessible than ever. So we'll cover how to manage your inbound communications with really smart, cheap phone systems, maybe also talk about website chat, texting and the trends there, and the importance of social messaging and paying attention to that as well. Then we'll talk about automating lead capture and qualification, which is key. How do you also help people qualify themselves? It's really important to give them the outlet, because we know with legal clients, they're not always going to disclose everything up front, especially in states where maybe there's call recording and things like that happening that someone in a criminal defense firm and their clients might be very well aware of. We'll talk about handing off new client intake into really smart systems and to services, speaking with experience about Smith.ai, but in general, consistently collecting payments and scheduling. These are two things that are so critical. We'll not just talk about the importance of responsiveness in terms of speed, but also in terms of the quality of the content. Like, what is actually happening when you respond or when someone responds? Are you carrying that conversation forward? Is there just a message being taken, or is just a voicemail being left? Well, how much can actually be accomplished on that first touch point? That's really critical. Scheduling and payments, if you charge for consultations, is very commonly a productive element of that first call if the lead is qualified. We'll talk about systematically referring out bad leads or unqualified leads, how to integrate your communications into your existing systems. And I've even got some bonus tools for you at the very end, bookkeeping and payroll and, automatic messaging and things like that, email handling tools. So why is all this important? Well, if you haven't read the CLE Legal Trends reports, I really encourage that you do so. They come out every year. In fact, the frequency has really ramped up during COVID. They were producing reports more than just annually to keep tabs on what was happening with the legal industry. And, to share some data, and I also have a lot in my head that I'll share with you that's not just on the slides. What the CLE Legal Trends reports consistently show year over year is that attorneys are bogged down, the average attorney, I should say, is bogged down by administrative tasks and time-consuming calls that go nowhere, and obviously work, which makes up a fairly small portion of the day of like billable hours. The vast majority is taken up by administrative tasks, by managing systems and trying to be the technologist, the firm owner, the strategist, the marketer, the attorney when time allows. So if we look at the data, 1.9 hours is the average amount of time that an attorney spends on billable work per day. That's clicked up a tiny bit in the last year or so. 3 hours on administrative tasks, another 1.2 hours on just office admin, invoicing, and configuring technology alone. Now, we know that 33% of the 6 hours a day not spent on billable work goes towards business development. So obviously we have growth on our minds. Now, really interestingly, 2 out of 3 potential clients say their decision to hire is most influenced by an attorney's responsiveness to their first call or email. Now, at the same time, spam calls are way up in the billions every year, and no one's doing anything about it, to block those proactively. So we have to take it upon ourselves as business owners and operators to block those spam calls, so that when you see an unknown number on your phone and you think, is this the best new potential lead? Or is it an existing client who's calling me from another line? Or is it spam, right? And we just don't know unless we have systems in place that can alert us that is that client or that lead or that spam. Then you don't want to answer the last one, but you very much want to answer the first 2. So that makes things difficult. And as a result, you are trying to minimize interruptions because, look, there's so much time that's already been taken up by other tasks that, sure, you're not going to answer the phone every time, and you're certainly not going to open up WhatsApp and chat and Facebook Messenger and texting to your firm, because how could you possibly incur more interruptions? Given that also each interruption has a high impact, not just during the time of that call or chat where the conversation is happening, but the sort of refactoring time of after that interruption happens. You have to get back up to speed with the task that you were doing and reset your brain to be, back on that casework or back on that strategic marketing plan. Those are things that you can't easily outsource or automate, right? Now, troubling is that 59% of people on average don't hire an attorney even after a consult. So we'll talk about how to make sure that those consults are worthwhile and well qualified. Payments can be one way, and screening questions can be another very effective way. Now, relevant here also is if we're trying to maximize, output and time and productivity and profitability, when we look at the data that 86% of an attorney's earnings are ever collected, that leaves a lot of room to gain more of those, those earned revenues if we just follow up promptly with those outstanding accounts receivable and invoices, et cetera. So we'll talk about some solutions for that as well. Now, really interestingly, if you look at the CLE Legal Trends Report, you'll see that 86% shifts wildly between practice areas. So if you go back, I think it was the 2017 or 2018 report, there's a list in the appendix that shows by practice area, what is the discount rate, what is the collection rate of those attorneys who responded, their revenue. So that's something to be particularly aware of. If your practice area is more prone to discounting, it might be something you're doing that you don't realize is maybe on par for your practice area or quite different from the practice area. So what does all this data mean? I mean, basically, we know that there are a number of dilemmas. The first dilemma is that you want to minimize interruptions, but maximize responsiveness, especially when it comes to leads and clients and court staff and people you certainly don't want to or can't afford to leave a voicemail. Now, we know also, as one other statistic, only less than 50% of incoming calls are answered for the same reasons that you've got, your own phone not answered because you're thinking it's spam. So too are the leads and clients not answering their calls. So a missed call then has this ping pong sort of effect where you're just chasing and trying to get in touch with each other, and there's phone tag. So this is just one indication of, great inefficiency and loss of business that would go to that first responder, so to speak, if they just pick up that first communication. So really low hanging fruit. I'll also say that this is a great competitive advantage that is really close at your fingertips. Doesn't really cost anything extra when it comes to the tiny margin that you might spend, to improve your systems here. Well, you've just gotten a lot more new clients because those calls aren't going to voicemail. So we'll talk about that. And it's a better experience for the clients too. And what we find is, the vast majority of people say that if they get great experience, get great, call handling, someone's responsive, et cetera, they actually end up over the lifetime that they're a client with a business spending 14% more. So it definitely pays to deliver great prompt service. Now, the second dilemma here is, you don't want to spend your time chasing down payments. You don't want to spend, 30 to 50% on a collections agency. So how do you improve the revenue take that's available to you? You really need easy and efficient systems to capture all the accounts receivable. Similarly, with technology, you're not going to go back to school probably for a computer science degree or learn all the ins and outs maybe of a system like Zapier, but you really want your tasks to sync up between systems. You want a call to be reflected in a client's record in your CRM or practice management system. And you don't want that to be done through manual data entry because that's just more time spent on very routine tasks when you're capable of way higher order tasks. The fourth dilemma is really about, control dynamics. And this is something that I find really interesting when we look at small business owners across, a lot of different industries. Oftentimes those who are prompted to work in smaller firms or start a small firm, it really is about, control. Are you in control of your methods of work, of the practice areas, et cetera? And what we find is that there, for many small business owners, is this sort of lack of control or lack of a sense of control because there's so much noise inundating you and so much new technology to learn, so many, in a client services business, demands from clients that may or may not be justified. And that can really lessen the sense of control. Am I in charge of my own destiny? So setting up a lot of these automations and outsourcing systems that I'm going to talk about will help you to maximize control over your work, improve work-life balance, help you maintain boundaries, which obviously is very important in client services as well. So what is the solution? The solution is really adopting cost-effective and efficient systems. So we've got routing and tracking is one element for the inbound communications, filtering to make sure you're having the right conversations, intake to make sure you're capturing the relevant information to have future productive conversations and to sign the right clients, and then scheduling to make sure that even if someone's not available right now, that's committed for the near future. So there isn't that chase. It's really critical. How do we evaluate these systems? So one of the most important things, obviously, is how affordable they are. We find with, for example, calendaring systems, they're anywhere from free to fully featured, about $5 to $15 a month per user. Obviously, small firms have less to pay than larger firms there, but that's extremely productive and high ROI in terms of the actual cost that it's going to incur to business. Then how customizable is it? So is it something that you can grow into and grow with, or are you going to outgrow the software very quickly? You may find that Google Voice, for example, worked for you when you were, a new solo and you didn't know, what can I possibly commit to in terms of monthly costs. But the customizability of something like Google Voice, the customer support behind it is significantly lacking when it comes to comparing it to other tools, other, VoIP, so, phone systems, cloud phone systems. It really does pay to have something that is flexible enough to work with your systems, to work with, how you want to work, and to have people reach you in a professional manner. One element of professionalism being that you can actually reach customer support and not have to mess around with your phone system not working in the middle of a workday, where that is a critical component of your business. So yes, it has to be customizable. Yes, it has to be affordable, but also, is there a backup? Is there support for you if things don't go right? Because eventually there will be things that don't go right. Is it easy to use and monitor? So similar to my last point, things won't necessarily always go right. You want to know when things aren't going right and not have someone tell you a week later that your phone system's not working and that they can't get through on your calls and you've been paying for Google Ads the whole time. So we'll talk about auditing your systems, but they should also be easy to use and monitor. They should also be comprehensive in the sense that it's really much nicer to have fewer bills to pay, fewer systems to look at, fewer tabs open on Google Chrome, et cetera. So the fewer channels you have to look into on a daily basis, the better. The less task switching, the better. And that will also give you generally a better picture comprehensively into how your lead flow is going, how your client work is going, without having to switch so many times to see, where's that client at their, progression of the case, and have they paid their bills? How many different systems do you have to check? Integrating within your processes is really essential, because if you have systems that, are separate, but they don't talk to each other, then you have a lot of manual data entry and a lot of different areas to check. So even if the systems are separate, and let's say you have a calendar somewhere, an intake form somewhere, a CRM, a case management system, a voice, over IP cloud phone system, you want them to at least reflect into the shared data what is going on with each of those. So through APIs, which are basically touch points that different systems can recognize and identify as the same field. Okay, I know that this caller by this name matches the same name in Clio, let's say. Then we know that that phone call can be logged under that contact record in Clio. That caller, who happens to be a client, called. Now we have our systems a little bit in sync. You have an intake form, it creates a new contact record in, let's say, Clio Grow. Then you're going to have all of that data from that intake form now into your CRM to nurture and follow up with them. And maybe you even have email and other calls connected to that as well. So those systems playing well allows for you to set up really efficient workflows and not have to manually enter that contact in every system across the board. Now, the last thing is, if you have any human components to these systems, they really should have reasonable discretion, because if you are looking at outsourcing to a paralegal or a receptionist or assistant service, like what I often find is the most common complaint with outsourcing is I just didn't get enough out of that. I wasn't finding it to be productive. And often it comes back to the person who is the assignor to say, was I giving as much as I could have, or was I just limited in my comfort zone to give them the discretion and the, range that they could operate in? Was I giving them too small tasks? Was I not letting them sort of stretch their wings? And that's an area where there's a lot of inefficiency in outsourcing, is it just is the very most basic tasks. And of course, the ROI, the return on the investment, is not going to be very high. So understanding how potential clients can reach you, the most common channels, we're talking phone, email, text, web, which might mean chat. It might also mean a contact us form, which may or may not mean something very basic or more complex. We'll talk about different examples and best practices with contact forms very shortly. So let's just review what this means. I've talked about VoIP and cloud phone systems really briefly, but just to get down to it, like landlines, I'm sure many of you during COVID don't have landlines anymore, but moving into home offices, there needs to be a line that's dedicated for the business. Oftentimes that's now in the cloud, so to speak. It's just over the internet phone service. You can actually have it ring to an app on your cell phone. It can ring to your desktop, but landlines are really, sort of passe, so to speak. It can be, a backup system. A lot of people still have it in their physical offices, but the really nice thing now is that there are phones, desk phones, that have a little cord attached to the wall that actually can support cloud phone technology. So you can, reassign your numbers, you can easily route and forward calls without having everything stuck on a landline. So that's a really nice benefit if you like having that physical office phone and then having it connected into a more flexible system. Now, the really nice thing with cloud phones is that they're extremely affordable. The competition is super high, higher than ever. And there are even companies that are coming out like Corvum, that's Corvum, that are specific to legal or that are built just to integrate with Clio and other software and systems that you might be using. So you can now look into, does the system have the integrations that I want? Is it connected into the video conferencing and other text messaging software that I want? Most of these services now are so fully featured. You'll see a list of like 50 or 100 features that they offer, and comparing them is a matter maybe of, what is their customer service like? Do they give you integrations up front, or is there an extra fee? And is it going to allow you to, operate in the way that you like? Do you like the app interface? Do you sort of find their system intuitive? Because things do and will change with your phone service, where you have to change the forwarding, you want a vanity number, et cetera. The more flexible, the better it plays with your systems, the better. SIP is basically a soft phone protocol that turns any internet connected device, like a computer, into a phone. So I could download X-Lite for Bria, which is one company, as a program on my computer and have my computer ring, not during webinars, but have my computer ring and just have an easy call without having to touch my phone or worry, what's that number coming in on my cell phone. It's, more common in larger businesses, but can be very handy when you want the flexibility of a non-phone device like a cell phone or a desk phone, and having everything sort of incorporated into your computer or monitor. So there are some different types of handling the calls when they come in. So I just wanted to cover this really briefly. There is a lot of misconception around, what is an IVR, voice response system, a call center, or virtual receptionist. So, it really comes down to how robotic or how human are these systems. So there are different forms of call routing and handling. At the most basic, you've basically got the robotic, press 1 for attorney Jane, press 2 for attorney Joe, or press 1 for sales, 2 for support, 3 for billing, et cetera. Those will come standard with all cloud phone systems. And what you find the most benefit in is flexibility there, being able to change those and also not allowing you to mess it up, because you can create loops. You can, set traps for yourself if they give you too long of a leash. And you want to make sure the customer support is checking and helping you do quality assurance whenever you make routing changes or phone tree changes. Now, when it comes to sort of the human-centered approach with a call center, which may or may not sit after or instead of phone routing. So you might have press 1 for sales, 2 for, press 1, let's say for new clients, 2 for existing clients, for a law firm example. Press 1 for new clients might go to a receptionist service or a call center, and press 2 for existing clients might go to the firm, just as an example. Now, if you press 1 and you get a call center, what does that sound like? Is it noisy, busy, semi-robotic, scripted, or is it actually more of an in-house feel? Maybe it's just to the in-house receptionist during daytime hours, and after hours, it rolls over to a 24/7 answering service. It rolls over if maybe that call isn't being picked up in the office on the first or second ring. So really critical to think through, like, what is my coverage 24/7? During COVID, we've seen that people are calling more and more after hours. It was already about 25% of inbound calls to law firms or after hours. Now it's even more than that. And we're seeing maybe a suppression of how much after hours activity there is because of chat, because of text, because of Facebook messages, et cetera. So there are still a lot of people who are calling, and those often come in after hours. And we know that voicemail doesn't allow for that conversion rate. You've already paid for the lead. You've already sort of working with the client. That relationship is on the line when it comes to your responsiveness. So I would definitely consider, how much does it approximate an in-house experience if you are going to be outsourcing? Are the receptionists for a call center or virtual receptionist service abroad? Are they domestic? Do they sound like someone who would be at your firm? Are they dedicated or distributed? So dedicated services will provide someone just to you, but they have the same issues with turnover and sick time and vacation time and ramping up for marketing campaigns and delays there that you might find if you hired in-house. Distributed receptionist services really rely on technology to allow all receptionists to handle the calls for that firm or business. So that can provide a lot of benefit as long as that technology is solid and allows that receptionist to handle the call as if they're in-house. Obviously, the accuracy and the sort of custom approach needs to be critical there. So you can't have a distributed team and everyone sounds clueless about, the firm they're answering for. That's not very productive. So it really pays to, obviously read reviews for any service you're working with and make sure that that level of standard of service is up to your standard of service. Now, the other comparison is, remote versus in-house. I often don't say that there's necessarily versus here. It's more like where on the spectrum is it? You might have someone who's able to answer calls routinely, Monday through Friday, maybe except for a lunch break or, when they need to, run away from their desk for an errand, whatever the case may be, a meeting. You still want those communication channels handled. Now, it might just be overflow call handling. It might be, look, I've got, basically 24/7 staff or intake specialists, maybe for a PI firm. And it's more about handling the chats and texts and Facebook messages that come in. So audit those channels and then make sure that they're covered, whether there is in-house components or not. Now, there are a lot of issues with the phone systems when it comes to ring delays. And I just want to pause here for a moment and make a recommendation. Sorry for the weird formatting here on this slide. So ring delays are really important for you to look at as soon as today, if this is not something that you have already undertaken. And if you've come to any of my talks before, I talk about this really often. So latency in your phone system is something that is quietly hiding and really sinister, because you don't know when your phone rings once and you're picking up quickly, just like Maddy told you to, that actually the person on the other line has heard 8 rings and they're on their last ring before they hang up. And sometimes you hear dead air after you've just picked up after 1 ring. That's latency. So if your callers are hearing multiple rings and you're hearing 1 ring, that's a big problem. It should be a couple rings and a couple rings. So the easiest way to audit this, which I would encourage you to do, is to have someone call your main line, whichever is the main number that gets answered for your business. And that should be, or it could even be your direct line if that's on your business cards, whatever. Count the number of rings from that friend of yours as soon as it starts ringing. And then when you hear it ring to your line, count the rings. And those should be very, very close. If your friend is hearing anything other than like 3, 4 rings, anything more than that before they connect with a real live person is very troublesome, right? So that's an easy, low-hanging fruit audit to do as soon as today, and to make sure that you don't have latency. Now, if you go on our blog, there is a, I'll put this in the chat and actually in the follow-up for everyone who is here. I'll send the link. There is an article by Corvum founder, Graham, I think Nelson Sutter, and he wrote a blog post on Smith.ai's blog with actually a templated email to send to the phone system that you're currently using that says, I experience latency. What are you going to do to fix this? I'm not satisfied paying my bill in full if you're not going to deliver your services in full, basically. So that's something that you can complain about, and I would encourage you to do so, because it's not acceptable. And if you need to switch systems, the one other benefit, flexibility in your VoIP, is that most systems have month-to-month contracts. If you have an annual contract, that gives you at least a little bit more leverage to say, you're really not upholding the terms that we agreed to. Month to month, you might find it's easier just to, move to a different service. So email systems, I'll get into this a little bit in terms of the back office tools that I recommend later, but really the most important thing is making it not a nightmare, and by reducing what actually is emailed. So if you have a CRM system, an intake system, a practice management system, first of all, it's a lot more secure typically than email, and it is way nicer for clients to interact through portals. And way better for you to track what's going on if you have any staff to tag those messages as relevant to a client or matter. One of the issues is that oftentimes people will just put a huge wall of text in an email or attachments that don't get through, and often the portals will resolve that. But one of the other issues is that you don't know if the email has been read or not. You don't know if it's been opened, if someone's working on a response. So we use at Smith.ai a tool called Front, which is frontapp.com. And I'm going to put that in the chat. That is an excellent solution for seeing when your emails are read and having collaboration within a single thread. So that almost becomes a mini CRM where you're able to, in an email thread, have a conversation with internal participants of your staff, whoever you invite in to participate. And it could be a paralegal and an attorney. It could be 2 different attorneys, whoever it is. You can have a conversation about that email, discuss how you're going to respond to that email, and then draft a response, share and edit it together, and send it. So tools like that are extremely effective. You can even identify contacts. You can tag contacts maybe as a current case or past client or new lead, court staff, referral partner, etc. Really, really helpful to also have triage rules so that all of those like fun and unnecessary emails and those newsletters don't clog up your inbox, and they're automatically routed to read it later or decide about this, marketing contract or whatever it is that's not the most urgent and important thing for you. Think about the Eisenhower decision matrix, if you know about that. really, really critical to not have those in your inbox, in your face, because they're very tempting and they will take up time better spent on other tasks. So are these emails getting logged in your CRM? If you're using, Clio, Lawmatics, my case, whatever it is, like, do you have that email, actually getting logged in there? That's important. Are your marketing campaigns, flooding your inbox with lead form fills, et cetera? You might get notified every single time that someone fills out a lead form on your website. Is that getting into your CRM? What's the follow-up process? Who's calling that person back? The Clio Legal Trends report, very interestingly, a couple of years ago, showed that most of the time, these leads were never getting contacted. And a lot of the time, even those who did make contact waited 24 hours. That is extremely low-hanging fruit. If you can respond quickly, even just with an auto reply or forwarding to a receptionist service to call that person back, you can win more business out of your existing marketing dollars and efforts right now. I don't know what's more compelling than that. So email is absolutely a point of optimization and opportunity. Text messaging, there's so many awesome tools here. I'll just drill it down into make sure that you have texting options on your main number. So people are going to be texting your business phone number, whether you are aware of it or not, whether you like that or not. So I would really encourage you to look at, ZipWhip, or sorry for hitting my mic, ZipWhip, or Text Expander, Connect with a K. Those are all really awesome tools that allow you to add text messaging onto an existing phone number. Now, if you want those to be responded to and not responsible for responding to them yourself, you can also add on receptionist services to respond to those. But the most important thing, another audit for you here, sorry to give you homework, you'll thank me later, make sure that you check in your VoIP phone system, are there texts that are coming through to your phone number? Because I have had a lot of people come up to me over the years to say, I didn't realize I was getting text messages. And it's absolutely critical now to my business to be responding to these texts from leads, from clients, from referral partners. Hey, I just got off the phone from a consultation, and I, am not going to be able to, work with this client. Do you want me to put you in touch with them? Yes, please. Right. So those are the texts that are coming through, whether you know it or not. So check if those texts are coming through. And if not, find a solution to get them through to you. You can absolutely add texting to any landline or phone number that you need it to, or switch to a different VoIP, and you'll be able to have that at your fingertips in no time. Web chat. Think what you like about website chat, but really it does improve lead generation, 20 to 30% we're seeing for attorneys. And there are a lot of people in different practice areas who never thought that it could work for them because, my potential clients are going to call me, they're going to use my scheduling tool, they have my email, whatever it is, they are chatting in and they were converting from these chats. Now, the most important thing is it going to be automated? Are we programming a chatbot for you? Or is it going to be live staffed and either you're going to answer all these chats or you're going to have someone answer them for you, probably with some help from automated answers and recommended, responses to commonly asked questions. A lot of these solutions also will help you put a, scheduling into the chat, payment collection into the chat. Smith.ai, so we have seen that when you have a workflow on a phone call that basically goes screen this lead, schedule them for an appointment, but take, let's say, $150 credit card charge for that appointment, pre-authorize it or whatever, that leads to much better turnout rates for consultations. And that's something that can actually work in a chat situation as well. It can even work via text message just by sending a scheduling link or sending a payment link with something like LawPay. So very, very effective. And oftentimes it can mimic the same workflow that you'd use over the phone. Critical for attorneys here. So add a disclaimer before a chat starts. This is totally customizable as long as the system allows for it. So in the example of Smith.ai's chat, you want to say, like, at least any information disclosed in this conversation does not constitute legal advice, and it doesn't establish an attorney-client relationship. You might also find that you're comfortable saying, like, this is not staffed by attorneys, or this is a chat bot, or something to further clarify it and set expectations properly for what's going to happen in that chat. But capture the information up front so that you can also validate later on that, that person who might email you and say, I thought we're working together. You have the proof of that chat, the entire transcript, and the proof that you have this disclaimer there up front before the information was even submitted, before they said, I want to start this chat. There it is right in front of them. Now, we don't see any issues with that commonly, but it is a good protective mechanism. And that language, again, is completely, editable by you, or it should be in whatever system you choose to use. If not, our system obviously is the example here. So a few interesting things that we also find with chat, it's a really good, like, prevention technique of having calls come in that are just super basic, and you really wish the person had just gone to your website and looked up your address, looked up basic common questions, even looked up not basic questions. Like Kim Bennett here has a help docs section of her website, and she explains what is a virtual law practice, because she runs a virtual law practice. It's a really common question. You're not going to have, to answer that completely in a chat. You could just link to the article, and then that person can read it, because there they are online, on their computer or on their phone. And certainly they can find out for themselves, and they're going to be reading one way or another. Why not in the original article itself? Now, with that chat open, you can say, was that article helpful to you? And can we schedule you for a consultation? Are you comfortable now with what a virtual law practice is? And, Kim would like to help your business be set up for, whatever it is, establishing a new LLC or whatever, she's going to offer to that potential business owner or existing business owner. You may also have questions about, how do fees work, or how much is it going to cost, or when can we get started? And some of these things are not easily answered with a stock, FAQ link, and they shouldn't, frankly, be answered by, maybe someone who's staffing that chat, like a receptionist who really that's not in their domain. So make sure that like what is and isn't on the table when it comes to what the staff can answer, what you might need to answer, what might need to be scheduled for a call and addressed on a phone call after an intake form, after a client agreement is signed, et cetera, maybe even after a conflict check. So when we think about how potential clients are handled specifically, there are human and sort of technical elements that we're going to be talking about next in depth with respect to virtual services, obviously, in addition to, in-house services, and then software. We've talked a lot about, practice management software, calendaring software. How potential clients are handled is always a combination of both, and it really often depends on the workflows of the firm. You might find for a personal injury firm that there is an intake specialist, whereas with other firms, maybe estate planning, that workflow, that assignment of labor is almost laughable. A lot of people would just say it's a boutique practice. You're going to talk to the estate planning attorney, and there's no such thing as a whole inventory that an intake specialist might do for a personal injury case. So, it varies. But that's something that you'll have to factor in when you look at the productivity of your systems, of your staff, of yourself. What are the ways that there's room for efficiencies? Are you tailoring to your practice area as best as possible, or are you inheriting practices from other practice areas that might not be the best fit? Even with your practice management software, there's a lot of practice management software out now, and a lot of calendaring and billing software that might be better for subscription practices, or business law versus, consumer or individual law. It might be for flat fee versus, hourly billing. These are all things that you want to really factor in when it comes to the solutions that you pick. Ask those software providers, where are the most common use cases? What are the practice areas that find, the best use out of your software? Because if they're not naming yours, that should be a red flag. So, how do we put this together? We don't have a ton of time left, but I want to share a few other insights around software versus staff. So automating and outsourcing, basically. When I think about putting together an email in MailChimp, for example, I think, all right, well, I'm going to write the content. That's my human contribution. And then when do I send that email? That's actually a really great example of how MailChimp can do it better than I can, because they know across their entire millions and millions of users and databases, they know when that one person in my email list times all, let's say 100,000 in my email list are going to open their emails. And across the board, can MailChimp send that email individually based on when that user is going to open, based on previous performance and likelihood, right? I can't possibly know that. I'm not going to crunch all that data myself. And for a single email, it certainly wouldn't be worth the time, but it is worth it to get that email opened if I have an offer or an update for my client base, et cetera. So if I were an attorney and I were thinking, how can I get the most exposure and bang for my buck with these systems? For example, using email, because it's a simple example. What am I doing that I could be doing better with technology? You better believe I'm going to have MailChimp figure out the best time to send that email. I am not going to, read a few articles online. I happen to know maybe, Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. is a good time to send an email, but MailChimp might know that a certain segment of my audience doesn't fit that mold. They're going to send that at a different time, just for that audience, just individually when they're going to open. And that is going to give you a competitive advantage so that your systems are performing as best as possible for you, not despite you, not despite like what you're trying to control, that you should really let go and let the systems function. So a couple things here. When it comes to the workflow, this screen is really just focused on the lead sources, how they get in touch, who is responsible for responding. And then what we're going to focus on next is qualifications. Are they good leads or are they bad leads? And how can we tell, and do we nurture them, or what do we do with them? So if we, turn them into clients, or if we refer them out. I covered phone systems already, so if you want to look at any tips, you can do so later, but I really want to focus on intake. So one of the most common mistakes with intake is having the questions be way too long up front, having the format be unfriendly, meaning forcing someone to use Skype when very few people are using Skype compared to Zoom, for example, right now. And how much friction are you introducing in that process? Because all the friction will result in lower lead conversion rates at the end of the day. Now, sometimes you have so many leads and you want to introduce a little bit of friction, but do so with the questions and do so with payment. So you can ask for upfront payment if you have a lot of leads and you want people to commit to a payment for a consultation. You can also credit that payment to their first bill so that you're not penalizing those best leads for you. Also think about the length. How much time do you really need? And are you going to be strict about cutting off that consultation time or even that phone call so it doesn't drag on forever and it's just inefficient? And that lead probably feels like they have a lot of control over the next call, and the next call, which we all know in client services is not necessarily to anyone's benefit. You want to make sure that those boundaries are maintained there. So really aim for 5 to 10 questions and think about what are the most important questions that you need to get up front to help with conflict checks, to help make sure that they're in the right practice area, location, they have the ability to pay, they have a sense of urgency, how did they hear about you? Couple examples here. So Emily Cooper in Minnesota asked, what is your legal issue, family law, Social Security, disability, or other? If it's other, can you even submit that form? not necessarily. And if it is other, maybe that goes into a referral workflow. Is there a court hearing scheduled in your case? And if so, when is it? That's really critical. So you can set timing according to, what is that lead's timing? Does that work for you and your firm? Are you going to be able to work this case? Then there are other intake forms that actually capture information, have an SEO benefit. So they show up on search because you've made this form into something actually useful for your leads, like a traffic ticket estimator, like an eviction notice form for a municipality that, the lead who might be a property owner can fill out themselves, but because you're the conduit for that form and you've mapped it to your own system, as Tri-City Legal has here, and you can see this example yourself if you click on this slide at a later time. This is like their main lead generation tool because they capture all the information, they send it filled out as a PDF to that lead, and then they know it's a 5-day notice, for example, and they can follow up in 3 days and say, so glad that you found that form helpful. How is it going evicting that tenant? And you better believe that they're going to go with that firm. If they need a law firm's help, that's the firm they're going to go with, one that they already feel like they owe something to in a good way. So you don't have to go with all the standard forms necessarily. You have to go with what works for you. Scheduling, absolutely the most important thing, to just pick a service and don't agonize about if it's the right one. Most of them have feature parity. Calendly, Acuity, Schedule Once has booking with approval, which is really great because it allows someone to pick 3 times and you to pick the best out of the 3 that works for you. So giving you back a little bit of control. Also make sure that you have calendar invites and not just emails that go through. So it shows up on their calendar, and you can also set up booking reminders to go to email, to go to text message, to help make sure that that person shows up for their consult, which also a payment will do if they have some skin in the game. Now, Justy Nickel, this might actually be an old link because her firm name changed, but she's got her branding on her Acuity scheduling link. She has different calendar appointments that are available, and she knows that she's going to direct leads and clients to different options that are available here. So in her email signature, she might have a link for clients only to schedule an appointment or a check-in, but for leads, she's going to have a 30-minute phone consultation, and then additional time after 30 minutes is charged at a rate of $300 per hour. So that is also a very interesting, approach to getting people to join that call, know that they can extend it if there's a good fit there. She has a very smart workflow actually, where she will make sure that someone completes the form in order to have her show up to that scheduled appointment. There's 2 components there. You have to fill out the form and you have to book an appointment. And then you must include all parties' names on that form so that she can prepare the conflict checks, etc. And she has a workflow where on that call, if it's a good fit, her her online doc signing software has been set up to easily craft a quick agreement based on templates, et cetera. And she can get that client to sign as soon as even on the phone, if they're with their email, or right after. And that makes for really efficient workflows and very high conversion rates. So step 5 here, consistently collecting payments. This is so important because we're doing all of this work. We're helping, get the revenue in the door. And then when people don't pay their bills, it's like, I wasn't, in the bill collection business. This isn't something I want to do. It also disrupts that close personal relationship that so many of you have with your clients. So oftentimes this is an opportunity for outsourcing. What happens with most collection agencies is they take way too much of the actual revenue, and then you end up not maximizing the revenue you thought you would. So I would really encourage you to outsource that payment collection. I don't know why it says log texting time on here. That's a mistake. Add online payments into your portal, onto your website, allow people to make a payment by phone. They could call your firm, your office, the receptionist service can have that link available and say, absolutely, I can take that credit card payment by phone. How much is due on your bill? What's the invoice number? Put that in the note. These are efficiencies. Even adding it to chat, texting in and asking for what's my bill that's due, and can I pay here on my phone. Most of these solutions are actually easily accessible on mobile devices. The point being, get paid, and anything that's past due, follow up on those now before the end of the year. The importance of, timing it with people's paychecks is not to be overlooked as well. So 6th step here, really systematizing referrals is so important. If you're not taking a systematic approach with your referrals, I encourage you to look more seriously at them. I know during COVID, there's been a lot of gaps in networking opportunities, but the most important thing is to keep joining different groups. Maybe it's Facebook or on LinkedIn or through the Bar Association, participating in activities, even like this one, and seeing, are there people who you want to connect more with, and reaching out, because oftentimes people are shy and they want to reach out just as much as you do. In a lot of the Facebook groups that are around, there's some fantastic ones that are not just local, but they're large enough where there are enough people in major metro areas, even smaller metro areas. A group with a few thousand people might be beneficial to you, even if you're in, Birmingham or Buffalo, New York, as I am. There are attorneys all over the country who are looking for great referral partners. I would encourage you to look at the referral fee basics article that's here, so you know what is and is not allowed. But even if you're not getting into the fee sharing and anything like that, you are at least thinking about the golden rule. If you're referring to someone, they're much more likely to refer back to you and return the favor. And that's how a good relationship starts. So the money flows through the clients more than it just flows through referral fees, whatever state you're in. And I would just say that those relationships have a lot of payoff that's more than just that initial transaction, but certainly the client who is referred, who then you refer back another client at a later time, that is worth a significant amount of money. And we see that also lessens the pressure on marketing channels, which if you are doing any marketing spend right now, you'll know that the costs are through the roof, at least speaking, as we're entering fall 2021. So set a plan and systematically lay out who are the best referral partners for you. And if you don't already have on your website and with your frontline staff, these are the firms to refer to for these types of cases that we don't handle. Make sure that you put that on your website, other recommended firms, and to your receptionist, these are the firms that we recommend for these types of cases. So it really does become a system and it's not just a one-off thing. Now, the 7th step is really just integrating your communications into your existing systems. I covered this a lot earlier, so making sure that your emails and calls and texts are logged in your system. Now, importantly, for billing reasons, and then also importantly for record keeping and communications and just following the flow of the conversation reasons. I will also say that it's really important to have call tracking in place so you know the lead sources of the best quality leads. What are the keywords and campaigns that are performing for you on search, whether it's paid or organic? Being able to do more analytics is often centered around having a CRM. And then, as I promised, there are some back office tools here that will allow you to track your calls, receipts, especially during non-COVID times when we were traveling a lot more, calendaring, as I mentioned, Calendly, Acuity, and Schedule Once, and a number of other tools here that are available to you, including Bench, which for accounting bookkeepers monthly cost extremely affordable. I think it's about $250 a month. What do we do next? I will cover this for those who can stay for more than just another minute, but I want to be at least mindful of, oops, there's an extra slide in there. One resource, which is the Law Firm Communication Playbook and Library, that are free downloadable resources to you if you view that slide deck, and I'll send a recap email with these links as well. That allow you to just get templates and resources right now to start improving your email drip, your follow-up. What are the messages you're sending to leads? How are you responding across the most important channels? There's a lot there. And finally, thank you for joining me today. I'll go back a couple slides and just carry on for another minute or two for anyone who wants to stay. But The CLE course number is 5583, and you will get a half an hour of general CLE credit for this class. So I'm happy to answer some questions. I do want to go back just a moment to what to do next. So track your time. This is so critical. So is it billable time? Is it leadership strategy time? Is it neither? And then also, if it's neither, is it something you can continue doing, something you can streamline, reduce doing, something you can automate, or something you can outsource? Those are the categories that you can hand off that are not billable work. An attorney's got to do it. You can't, have a receptionist do that for you. Is it leadership work? And really be careful how you define that. Is that something you're just not willing to give up, or is it truly leadership strategy work and only you can do it? If you're saying to yourself many, many times a day, oh, can I outsource this? Only I can do it. It really would start challenging yourself, or having other attorneys who you're close to have, check-ins with them and say, here are the things that I'm facing. I can't figure out how to outsource or automate this. Can I get a little help? There are resources, obviously, with the bar. There are resources with those Facebook groups that I mentioned. There are great podcasts that are out there checking out, Lawyerist and the Legal Talk Network to help support you here. But prioritize those fixes by the greatest time consumption, the importance, and the urgency that comes with them. The Eisenhower Decision Matrix is a great tool here to assess urgency and importance. And think about, so lead qualification and payments are most often like the really time-consuming tasks, like being on a phone call and going through the criteria to make sure that they're a good fit for your firm. And then, payments, that's easy. Just take the credit card number by phone. Those are really something that can be outsourced. The consultation cannot. So if you're thinking the qualification and the consultation are the same thing, really have to divide those. Like, only I can do it. That's the consultation. It's not the initial answering of that call, having a quick dialogue. What are you looking for? How are you looking for legal help here? What's your time frame? Okay, do you have a plan to pay for this? Maybe not, can you afford it? But how do you phrase that in a supportive way? What is your plan, or have you thought about how you're going to pay for this? Is that a concern for you at all? How did you hear about us? Those are questions that someone else can ask for you. Are they a qualified lead? Boom, yes, get them on your calendar, transfer them to you, get them in touch with you as soon as possible so that you can make it rain. You can convert that lead. You can sell them on the unique value propositions of your firm, how you're positioned to help them as best as possible in that legal situation. Data entry and lead follow-up are easily automated. If you find yourself following up with leads, every single new, contact form that comes in, every new email introduction, every new, a submission of a lead form from your ads, any person who sends you a Facebook message or text or calls in, like, you're going to then chase them. Oh, they haven't made a decision after the consultation, or I haven't heard back from my first email. Have to chase them more than you think, but also that can be automated. So in that playbook that I mentioned, that's something that can be automated with fantastic marketing automation systems. MailChimp is one of them. ActiveCampaign is another one. There are so many email systems that are super affordable, and some of them, I think even MailChimp will give you several thousand contacts before you even pay anything. So you can make sure that that works. Beautiful templates. You don't have to hire a designer, and set those nurturing drips to go out. If you still haven't heard back from someone, you don't have to personally have that in your brain space to think, have I heard back from that lead or not? At least get your technology to do that for you. You write the email, it has a merge field for their name. Maybe you can customize it if you want to based on other factors, like how they heard about you. We were put in touch by Maddy Martin, and I just wanted to follow up and see if you still, wanted to move forward with that legal matter. That can be extremely effective. It really takes at least 6, if not 10 touches to follow up and have confidence that they're going to move forward or not. So if you're only trying 1, 2, or 3 times, that is not enough. You might feel like a broken record, but from their end, if they haven't told you to stop, you very much should continue to reach out to them, being mindful of the practice area and the timing. This is really critical. If it's a personal injury matter, for example, the cadence is going to be very quick, and you're going to follow up at least like immediately and then daily, and checking in with a phone call and very personalized but fast. If it's business law and a new incorporation or outside general counsel or anything else, maybe estate planning, long duration sort of discussions or legal matters, that's going to be an area where you follow up with less intensity and not daily. Probably you would bother someone, you have to spread it out a little bit more. So lend your expertise into this process and really think about what makes sense here, but start somewhere. Don't get into that analysis paralysis where you're trying to perfect it. Oh, I have to figure out the perfect cadence. Send out the emails, see what the response is like, keep sending them out. And if you have to space them out a little bit, or if you have to tighten it up a little bit and send more sooner, maybe try an extra phone call or try an extra text message before you redo your whole email campaign. You can insert more communications into that process instead of just, fixing your system and fussing with it constantly. The key is to really make sure that you're following up often and over a long period of time. So implement sort of your new intake form, this new process. How are you automating and outsourcing things? Tackle a couple at a time. You don't have to tackle everything at once, but every 30 days or so, tackle something new and have a timeline that you track so that what happens afterwards, Google Analytics does this very well, but other systems do as well. You can just use a note-taking app. Track your timeline and see what was the result in the next 30 days compared to the previous period. I'm getting more leads who I thought were quiet or never going to convert are converting. Clients say that they're happier and are rating my services more highly and more often on Google because I'm responding quickly, etc. Wait a couple months, before you've made major changes and to restabilize before making other major shifts. Don't go and redo your website and your intake forms and get a vanity phone number and hire staff and expect to be able to identify what the benefits of each individual change were. But when you do evaluate it, think about, the impact on the savings and the earnings and the leads and the client quality. Are those the clients who you want to be working with more now? The work-life balance and your stress levels, your sleep quality, et cetera. So it's not just, quantitative, it's also qualitative evaluation of how your firm is doing, and then reevaluate as a process that you undertake what improvements you can continue to make year over year, quarter over quarter, the frequency that makes sense for your business. So I will take a moment and answer a few questions right now that we have gone for the full CLE period. And this may be cut off from the recording, but I will answer them on the recording just as a backup. So a couple questions came through. Is Smith.ai service 24/7? Yes, it is. Do you share call information received from a law firm client with third-party advertisers? In general, what's the confidentiality policy? Our privacy policy is on our website. You can see it, Smith.ai. There's no call information at all shared with any third parties or advertisers. And I can say that we don't even offer call recording. That's something that you would have to do on your voice phone system, VoIP phone system, or with call tracking metrics, call rail, what converts, any of those sort of call tracking systems. So yeah, absolutely not. Yes, I have put in the chat the slides link. I will send a follow-up email to everyone who registered for this, whether you attended for the full time or not. And the recording will be provided to you through a Zoom link initially, and the Florida Bar may decide to post it as well. So let me just look through the chat and see if there are any other questions. Get them in now. If you, let's see, let me open up this screen a little bit more. I'm just going to go through and see if there's anything that I can answer while you're still here with me, if you want to stay around. Okay, so I think I discussed the, let's see. Oh yes, you can reapply for a whole hour credit if you want to. I don't know if they're going to approve it, but it was very quick to get the CLE credit. So if you believe that this is worth a full hour of credit, we did go way over 50 minutes. Then feel free. Again, the course number is 5583. So I'm happy to encourage you to do that. Couple other questions. So what is a CRM? Great question. So basically contact relationship management system. So it is a place to basically house your entire phone book with everyone's emails, with everyone's contact information, and also what is the relationship to that contact. So they might be another attorney you refer to. They might be a firm you're working with. They might be a vendor or business partner. They might be a potential client. They might be a repeat client or a past client, a lead who didn't move forward, who you want to follow up with in a later time to see if they're ready. You can basically track everyone you've been in touch with for whatever reason and log all the communications under them and run reports on how you're doing with those various relationships. If there's anyone who would like to schedule time with Smith.ai, because I see a number of people who are asking questions that I can't necessarily get to in this presentation, I am going to post the link to Calendly. I can probably do that in a way that actually shows you a hyperlink instead of just text. There we go. Can schedule time to talk about Smith.ai. I'm happy to talk about also our team who will take that call with you, how we can implement these things and help you with them at your own firm. So we are not business consultants, but we know a lot of these systems. A lot of us are practitioners, whether it's marketing or sales, and bring those questions to the table. We also have a lot of providers in our community who we have come to know and trust. So if you need help with Zapier integrations for your firm, if you need help with recommendations for great, CRMs or intake practice management systems, obviously the bar has a lot of great resources for that. We have a very good edit for those too. You can see our integrations page, etc. So MailChimp, I don't know if that's Florida Bar approved. That's something that I would love to know, but I don't know what the question is about on Facebook or LinkedIn. Yes, I am on both, and you can find me Maddy Martin on LinkedIn. Anyway, I will give you back your lunch hour, your afternoon, whatever it is for you. And feel free, my email is on this screen. Email me with questions. I will send out this recording as soon as it's done processing with the slide deck today in the next few hours. So keep an eye out for that with those other resource links that I mentioned to the playbook and library. Again, the course number today was 5583. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you soon.